Appearance on Dion's Daily Dose does not imply endorsement from or by any candidate or guest. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by Dion Bergeron or Dion's Daily Dose are his own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of any guest. Material and information presented is for general information purposes only. The Dion's Daily Dose name in all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owners, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion's Daily Dose.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to tonight's Dion's Daily Dose. And it is Triple D Presents Face to Face with Sean. Dion and Sean, together, we're going to cover the Titanic.
Yep.
And it is quite a Titanic mystery, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'll try not to do too many puns. I'm really notoriously bad at them because I don't like puns. So look, we know the official story, right? The Titanic was cruising, hit an iceberg, and right?
Yep.
So there are some pretty wild conspiracies out there regarding the Titanic. Everything from, you know what? We're just gonna do it. You know what? Yeah, it'd be too hard to do this. So here's what we're going to do. So here we go. All right. So I don't like using this as a source, but I'm going to refer to Wikipedia because I don't necessarily trust them, but it's a good layout of the various conspiracy theories that are out there.
All right.
Okay. So let's get into it. All right. So let's get this going here. I don't think we need audio. Oh, yeah, we do. There's one thing that I want to show you. Okay, here we go. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, Titanic conspiracy theories according to Wikipedia. On April 14th, 1912, the Titanic collided with an iceberg. We all know what happens. Apparently, 1,496 fatalities. It's a lot of people that died on that boat, that ship. So, have you heard of the pack ice theory?
I have not.
Okay, it's not a conspiracy theory per se, since it accepts that the sinking was an accident. However, it differs from the commonly accepted theory and is considered implausible by the vast majority of historians. What this guy says, Captain L.M. Collins, a former member of the Ice Pilotage Service, based a conclusion on 3 pieces of evidence and going off of his own experience of ice navigation and witness statements given at the 2 post-disaster inquiries, that what the Titanic hit was not actually an iceberg, but low-lying pack ice.
Oh.
Drift ice, also called brash ice, is sea ice that is not attached to the shoreline or any other fixed object. Drift ice is carried along by winds and sea currents, hence its name. When drift ice is driven together into a single large mass, it's called pack ice. So basically a whole bunch of floating ice. So like an iceberg without the big part underneath, I guess.
It's possible.
That's what it sounds like. His book, called The Sinking of the Titanic, The Mystery Solved, 2003, goes into further detail about the events. There were no reports of haze the entire night of the sinking, but at 11:30 p.m., the 2 lookouts spotted what they believed to be haze on the horizon, extending approximately 20 degrees on either side of the ship's bow. Collins believes that what they saw was not haze, but a strip of pack ice, 3 to 4 miles ahead of the ship. Number 2, each witness had a different description of the ice, 60 feet high by the lookouts, 100 foot high by Quartermaster Rowe on the deck, and only very low in the water by 4th Officer Boxhall on the starboard side near the darkened bridge. Quote, an optical phenomenon that is well known to ice navigators, where the flat sea and extreme cold distort the appearance of objects near the waterline, making them appear to be the height of the ship's lights. or about 60 feet above the surface near the bow and 100 feet high alongside the superstructure, explains what probably happened by the witnesses' descriptions. Now, that is very interesting to me
Yeah.
because we all know the you see an iceberg. I mean, you think you know what an iceberg looks like, but I didn't realize that in, like he says, an optical phenomenon that is well known to ice navigators, it looks like it's in different spots. I didn't know that was a thing in really cold weather.
No.
Like, number 3, the Titanic made a turn by rotating 1/3 of the way from the bow, which caused her rudder to hard over and crushed her starboard side into an iceberg. This would have caused the ship to flood, capsize, and sink within minutes, damaging the starboard side of the hull and potentially the superstructure. So that's his theories. I find it interesting, but according to this, it differs and is considered implausible by the vast majority of historians. Well, I'm not so sure the vast majority of historians know what they're talking about either, so I don't know. But it's an interesting idea. Then there's the Olympic exchange hypothesis. Have you heard of this one?
I have not.
Okay, so the summation is that the company that owned the Titanic, right? They had a sister ship called
I've heard that.
the Olympic, right? What the claim is that they switched out the Olympic and the Titanic. Okay, it's a lot, but the short version is it would be way easier if it was for insurance money to just burn the ship down because there were differences and, you know, et cetera. Let's see. Now, deliberately sunk. Some conspiracy theorists believe that the Titanic was sunk on purpose to eliminate opposition to the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank. Some of the wealthiest men in the world were aboard the Titanic for her maiden voyage, several of whom, including John Jacob Astor IV, Benjamin Guggenheim, and Isidor Straus, were allegedly opposed to the creation of a U.S. central bank. No evidence of their opposition to Morgan's centralized banking ideas has been found. Astor and Guggenheim never spoke publicly on the subject, while Straus actually spoke in favor of the concept, according to this. All 3 men died during the sinking. Conspiracy theorists suggest that J.P. Morgan, the 74-year-old financier who set up the eponymous banking firm, arranged to have the men board the ship and then sunk it to eliminate them. That's the theory. Morgan, nicknamed the Napoleon of Wall Street, had helped create General Electric, U.S. Steel, and International Harvester, and was credited with almost single-handedly saving the U.S. banking system during the Panic of 1907. Morgan did have a hand in the creation of the Federal Reserve. Yes, he did. And owned the International Mercantile Marine, which owned the White Star Line and thus the Titanic. It goes into basically the reason why he canceled his trip was never really discovered, but conspiracy theorists say that he canceled it because he knew the damn thing was going to sink.
Very interesting.
So, closed watertight doors. Another theory involves Titanic's watertight doors. This theory suggests that if these doors had been opened, the Titanic would have settled on an even keel and therefore perhaps remained afloat long enough for rescue ships to arrive. However, this theory has been rebutted for 2 reasons. First, the first 4 compartments were naturally watertight, thus it was impossible to lower the concentration of water in the bow significantly. Second, Bedford and Hackett have shown by calculations that any significant amount of water aft of boiler room number 4 would have resulted in capsizing of the Titanic, which would have occurred about 30 minutes earlier than the actual time of sinking. Additionally, the lighting would have been lost about 70 minutes after the collision due to the flooding of the boiler rooms, etc. Then there's the expansion joints hypothesis. You heard of this one? Maybe not.
I'm not sure.
Titanic researchers continued to debate the causes and mechanics of the ship's breakup. According to his book, A Night to Remember, Walter Lord described Titanic as assuming an absolutely perpendicular position shortly before its final plunge. This view remained largely unchallenged even after the wreck was discovered by Robert Ballard in 1985, which confirmed that Titanic had broken in two pieces at or near the surface. Paintings by noted marine artist Ken Marshall and as imagined on screen, and of course James Cameron's film Titanic, both depicted the ship attaining a steep angle prior to the breakup. Most researchers acknowledge that Titanic's aft expansion joint, designed to allow for flexing of the hull in a seaway, played little to no role in the ship breakup, though debate continued as to whether the ship had broken from the top down or the bottom up. In 2005, there was a History Channel expedition to the wreck, and it scrutinized two large sections of Titanic's keel, which constituted the portion of the ship's bottom from immediately below the side of the wreckage. With assistance from naval architect Roger Long, the team analyzed the wreckage and developed a new breakup scenario, which was publicized in the television documentary Titanic's Final Moments, Missing Pieces in 2006. One hallmark of this new theory was the claim that Titanic's angle at the time of the breakup was far less than had been commonly assumed. According to Long, no greater than 11 degrees. There are lots and lots. We're not gonna dig through all of them. Fire and coal bunker, and that's the last one. But I want to go on because I think this is an interesting article, and it provides a little more information, a little more context. So this is from Business Insider. It says 5 wild conspiracy theories surrounding the sinking of the Titanic. A submersible searching for the Titanic has gone missing, causing renewed interest in the ship. Now, this is, unfortunately, we know exactly what happened to that submersible at this point. The Titanic sank in 1912, launching conspiracy theories around the nature of the disaster. Here are 5 of the craziest allegations around the doomed ocean liner. Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. Then it goes through what happened. Over 1,500 people lost their lives, right? Media frenzy, lots of fictional depictions. All right. So here are the 5 ones, right? The Titanic was marked by a controversial secret message. One conspiracy theory about the Titanic has been floating around for years. First, it's important to note that the Titanic was constructed in the city of Belfast by the shipbuilding firm Harland and Wolff. Okay. The conspiracy theory is that Catholic workers reacted in horror when the new ship's hull number 390904 was unveiled. The reason? If you flip 390904 upside down, it kind of looks like no Pope. I mean, not really, but maybe. As far as the theory goes, the Catholic workers saw this as blasphemy and worried that harm would come to the ship. But there are a number of big problems with this conspiracy theory, which conveniently Snopes has debunked. Ooh. To start, Harland and Wolff assigned the Titanic a yard number of 401. The 390904 number is completely made up. What's more, there would have been no Catholic workers on hand to warn their Protestant colleagues of the problematic hull number. In 1886, Protestant Harland and Wolff employees launched a large-scale attack on their Catholic co-workers, according to the book The Invention of the White Race. The result was an exodus of Catholic workers from the shipbuilder, which was Belfast's largest employer at the time. Yeah, it was really bad between Catholics and Protestants in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Anyway, next one. The Titanic was doomed due to a mummy's curse. I haven't heard the Mummy's Curse one. Have you?
Before I read this article, no.
Right.
But yes, I have now.
Yeah, now that you've read it. Did an ancient mummy seal the Titanic's fate? No. Human error and a lifeboat shortage brought about the maritime catastrophe. Still, the idea that an ancient curse sunk the ship is one of the more fanciful conspiracy theories that cropped up in the wake of the disaster. According to the legend, an ancient mummified princess left a trail of death and devastation across England in the early 1900s after being excavated and removed from Egypt. Once the beleaguered community of British art collectors and museum professionals had enough of the haunted mummy, an American archaeologist swooped in to purchase it. Ignoring his colleagues' warnings, he headed back to New York with his new acquisition. But the unfortunate scholar and the mummy never made it to the States because, lo and behold, the name of the ship that they sailed off on was the HMS Titanic. Dun, dun, dun. The tale is popular, but also completely fictional. Even disregarding the tale's fantastical elements, there was no mummy on the ship. That hasn't stopped the British Museum's so-called unlucky mummy from getting blamed for the ship sinking, though. Another theory, the ship was attacked by a U-boat. The Titanic is known as one of the biggest peacetime maritime disasters in history. The tragedy missed the onset of the First World War by 2 years. But some still speculate that a German U-boat was really behind the ship's sinking. If such a theory panned out, that'd make the Titanic sinking a precursor to that of the Lusitania. Remember the Lusitania?
Refresh my memory.
In 1915, a German U-boat torpedoed the British ocean liner off the coast of Ireland, killing 1,198 people. Yeah, that was the Lusitania. While the theory lacks an abundance of evidence, it's certainly not outside the realm of possibility. So we finally have the article saying, okay, this one's possible. A number of Titanic survivors reported to have noticed, quote, an unidentified vessel approximately 5 to 6 miles away from the sinking ship, which reportedly lingered until 2 a.m., according to Dr. Franklin Rule's piece in the HuffPost. Rule speculated that the craft was possibly, quote, a submarine that had surfaced to assess the damage it had caused, after which time it skulked off, and also cited survivor testimony about a number of explosions that seemed to go off deep within the ship. Quote, the sub may have deliberately targeted the luxury liner or possibly accidentally collided with it, Rule wrote. Now, that one is very interesting, and I think definitely possible, especially if survivors say they saw an unidentified ship a few miles away. That's exactly how it would go. I mean, they would sink this ship, whether because they thought it was a warship, which is possible. The ship was massive.
Uh-huh.
It could be that they actually thought it was a warship, torpedoed it, came up and went, oh, the boss is going to be pissed.
Yeah.
The Titanic never sank. You heard this one?
Yeah.
What if the Titanic never sank at all? That's the thinking behind one particular conspiracy theory. According to this idea, the Olympic, the Titanic's older, nearly identical sister was actually the one that went down. But what would have been the point of switching the ships in secret? In the book, Titanic, the Ship That Never Sank, researcher Robin Gardner wrote that the whole disaster was the result of an insurance scam by the International Mercantile Marine Company, which owned the White Star Line. The Olympic and the Titanic were both White Star Line vessels. According to Gardner's theory, the trouble started when the Olympic crashed into a warship in 1911 and was blamed for the accident in an ensuing inquiry. As a result, the White Star Line, an IMM subsidiary, was unable to receive an insurance payout. Gardner theorized the line fixed up the Olympic as best as it could, masquerading it as the Titanic. By allowing the wounded ship to continue on under assumed name, the company could collect the insurance payment when it sunk. The alleged incident wasn't to kill anyone on board. If the plan had gone off without a hitch, the ship would have sunk slowly and close to another ship that could subsequently rescue the crew and passengers. So what went wrong? According to Gardner, the liner ended up accidentally running over a darkened rescue ship, which passengers and crew members would later mistake for an iceberg. The blog Ultimate Titanic reported that despite Gardner's theory, all numbered items pulled from the wreck of the Titanic bore the construction number 401. The Olympic's construction number, on the other hand, was 400. What's more, Conspiracies at Sea, Titanic, and Lusitania, author J. Kent Layton wrote that before the Olympic was broken up for scrap, its woodwork was sold. Quote, never, not once, as a single piece of woodwork from the Olympic turned up with the number 401 stamped on the reverse, Layton wrote. That one seems pretty easy to lay to bed, as far as I'm concerned. I mean,
Yeah, you said that it'd be better just burn it.
Yeah, just to burn it and collect the insurance, because like I don't see why. That's a lot of work to go through. There are easier ways. And when you're looking to cash out, even if you're looking to do an insurance scam, work smarter, not harder. This is the one that I find particularly interesting. J.P. Morgan was behind the whole thing. Look at that guy, man. He doesn't look like a nice man, does he?
Mm-mm.
He really doesn't.
You don't want to have to owe him anything.
That's what I'm saying. This rumor has everything you could want in a conspiracy theory. A man powerful and wealthy enough to play God, overly complicated methods of assassination, a mass casualty event, the Federal Reserve Bank. Dun, dun, dun. There's a theory out there that J.P. Morgan sank the Titanic in order to pave the way for the establishment of the Federal Reserve Bank in the U.S. The bank's creation was reportedly opposed by multimillionaire John Jacob Astor, mining magnate Benjamin Guggenheim, and Macy's co-owner Isidor Straus. These three wealthy men did indeed lose their lives when the Titanic sank. Astor was last seen clinging to the side of a raft. Guggenheim, whose body was never recovered, reportedly put a rose in his buttonhole and quipped, quote, "We've dressed up in our best and are prepared to go down like gentlemen." And Strauss died alongside his wife Ida, who refused to leave her husband's side as the ship sank. But Morgan dodged death and disaster when he canceled his trip in the 11th hour. The powerful financier owned the IMM, which in turn owned the White Star Line. As such, he had his own personal suite, promenade deck, and specially designed bath on the ship. Morgan was reportedly supposed to be on the ship, but decided to skip the maiden voyage at the last second. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette reported that he decided to linger in Europe in order to buy tapestries for his art collection. I mean, I don't know, man. Take a trip on the latest, greatest, unsinkable ship, or buy some drapes. That's a tough choice, right? I mean, apparently it was for him. So what reason would Morgan have to allegedly sink his own ship? Conspiracy theorists say that in the interest of clearing away opposition to the Federal Reserve Bank, Morgan somehow manipulated all of his rivals into sail on the maiden voyage so that he could sink it. But Layton pointed out that it's almost unimaginable that Morgan could have gotten all three of his major rivals to take the fateful trip. Quote, "Surely there has to be easier ways to carry out the plan," Layton wrote. "Even more importantly, how was it that no one came forward in the century since and said, quote, yes, I helped to set up the sinking of the Titanic in order to kill three men who were opposed to the formation of the U.S. Federal Reserve." I'm just going to say this. If someone was involved in that, they're not going to come out and admit it because they're next. That line is incredibly stupid. That's the end of the article. I want to show you guys something. So, according to Thrilla the Gorilla on X, he says J.P. Morgan funded the building of the Titanic and canceled his long-awaited journey just hours before his proposed departure, which everything backs that part up. He did fund the building of the Titanic, and he did cancel. Three of the wealthiest men on earth who were against the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank happened to be invited aboard for its maiden voyage. Finally, the Federal Reserve Bank was created December 23rd, 1913. Now, this is a video. It says the deception was Titanic. It's two minutes long. Let's take a look, ladies and gentlemen.
They built a ship of death called the Titanic.
The sinking of the Titanic was the design of the Jesuit order to get rid of the opposition to the creation of a central bank in the United States.
And the men on the Titanic were opposed to a central bank. They had to die. Among those were John Jacob Astor, Isidor Straus, Benjamin Guggenheim, and a host of other millionaires who were opposed to a central bank in America. Therefore, they had to be taken out of the way. And they were on the Titanic.
The company building the ship was owned by J.P. Morgan, who was himself an agent of the Rothschilds family. The Rothschilds being the bankers for the Pope and the Vatican. The main...
Oh, yeah, okay. This is really hard to see because it apparently was filmed on a potato. But it says, I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire on which the sun never sets. The man who controls Britain's monetary supply, controls the British Empire, and I control the British money supply. Nathan Rothschild. Yeah, that's an accurate quote.
Jesuit targets were brought on board. The captain of the ship was Edward John Smith. It appears from his actions that Captain Smith was a Jesuit coadjutor, that is, a Jesuit who has taken the oath but does not wear the robes. A coadjutor blends into the scenery and never looks like a Jesuit priest. It is a veteran sea captain, Edward Smith, who orders the ship to travel through an 80-square-mile ice field at full speed on a moonless night. There had been over 8 telegrams warning the captain of the danger.
Okay, now that is an interesting perspective, right? I hadn't heard the Jesuit angle before,
No.
But if he did indeed receive multiple telegrams warning him of sea ice, why did he speed full speed into a ice field on a moonless night?
If he did.
If he did.
He's
We don't know.
warned 8 times, slow the ship down, slow the Titanic down, you're going too fast. Not once stopped.
Interesting.
Knew there was an iceberg field up ahead, knew that he should have slowed down, but didn't. And so you look and you say, how was it that this man could go headlong into a field of icebergs and not slow the ship down, not be more careful? The only conclusion you can draw is, as a coadjutor of the Jesuit order, right through the line, the chain of command, he was told, sink the ship.
Interesting. If true. I don't know. I have no way to verify the claims that are in here at this time, but I think it's worth looking into.
Yeah.
I will say this. I don't know. According to a couple of the sources that I read, there's no documented proof that the people that were on the ship were against the Federal Reserve. But that aside, the Federal Reserve was one of the worst things the United States ever did.
Yeah.
So it's possible. It's absolutely possible that there were, shall we say, bad intentions for the people that were on the ship, if they were indeed opposed to this. We're talking about, here's the thing that a lot of people don't really understand when it comes to the whole central bank thing. We're talking about more than money. We're talking about absolute control. Because once you control, like Nathan Rothschild said, once you control a nation's money supply, you control that nation. And we have the central bank in full control of the United States' money supply.
That is true.
And it goes way back, right?
And they're destroying our currency.
They are absolutely destroying our currency. Look, we have a situation here in this country now where if we don't get our butts in control, because that's really what we have to do, we're going to have to take control of this country away from the politicians, away from the central bank, away from these various entities that wish us harm. And we're going to have to restore the Constitution the way it was written. We're going to have to. One of the biggest issues, which is something we'll get into another time, is like we've talked about with trials. I'm not sure if it was you that I had the discussion with or not, but people have a flawed understanding of what they're supposed to do on a jury.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, it was you I talked about. They seem to have it in their head that they're there to make sure this person gets prosecuted, or there to agree with the prosecution or the state or whatever. No, you are there as the last line of defense, period. That's your job, to look at all the evidence presented and to determine whether A, crime was committed in the case of a grand jury, and B, whether this individual was responsible. There are some very, very disturbing stories I've read and heard from people who served on grand juries and were like, oh yeah, they wanted us back because we did such a good job at, passing down charges.
Oh,
That's a terrifying thought. That's a terrifying thought. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, Sean has to get going. We got a few more episodes of really good stuff coming up for you, and stay tuned to the channel because we have some really good, I would say phenomenal interviews coming up. Bobby Greer, local hero. He is part of a father-daughter weightlifting team. She just followed in her father's footsteps. Our nickname for him was Shrek. She is Baby Shrek. So, yeah, it's going to be really cool. I'm not sure if he's going to fit right there. He is just massive, broad shoulder, big, thick arms. He's a weightlifter. But it should be fun nonetheless. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for spending your evening with me and Sean. And we got a whole lot of fun stuff coming. So I hope you'll stay tuned. Without further ado, God bless you. God bless Indiana. And God bless the United States of America. Have a great night.
If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion's Daily Dose. This has been Dion's Daily Dose, hosted by Dion Bergeron. Executive producers, Sean Holgram and Michael Beebe. Copyright 2024. Dion's Daily Dose, all rights reserved.